Good evening, everybody. Matt Derrick with Chiefs Digest here. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I just realized after I started, I hadn't checked to make sure my microphone was all set up. So it looks like we're good to go. Hopefully everything is going well. And it looks like a couple of you are popping in already. Jackson, good to see you with the first comment. Love to hear from you tonight. Answer any questions that you got. I figure this could be an interesting conversation tonight after what the Chiefs went through the other night, and that was a tough one. I figured there's probably some feelings out there. Like I said, this might be a spirited conversation. There might be some spirited questions, some hard questions. I get that. If there's anything you want to know, pop up in the comments and let me know. May have a few too many windows open, so I'm going to close some things so that hopefully I'm not freezing up for you all. Let me know in the comments for sure if you guys see any problems or there's any issues that you see, because it might just be that I have too many windows open. It might just be me seeing the problems. So, but yeah, obviously a tough one for the Chiefs the other night. I don't know what else there is to say about that one. Yeah, I mean, if you're down on this team right now, I get it. There's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of tough things that are going on. And, and this team is struggling in a way that really probably hasn't, since 2018, early part of 2019. It's been a while since we've seen, this team go through any stretches. Even 2018 offensively, there wasn't any problems. I mean, you might even have to go back to 2017, really, under Alex Smith to be the last time that you really saw a few games where the Chiefs didn't put up the historic record-breaking offense that you've seen the last few years. And I get it. I mean, that's absolutely, reason to be disappointed, because the expectations for this team are sky high. They've set those expectations, and believe it or not, I mean, absolutely those exact same expectations for themselves. But I keep taking the big picture look back at this team and where it stands. And, the reality of it is that I think there's a lot of imperfect teams across the AFC right now. I was asked earlier today, to rank the top 5 teams in the AFC as I see them right now. I still have a hard time putting Buffalo ahead of the Chiefs just based on the body of work. I get the game the other night, and you got to have some respect for the head-to-head. It's probably a little bit the college playoff problem too. I think you have to give Baltimore the edge right now as the top team in the AFC because they've accomplished something. But, after that, and honestly, I mean, I don't think Baltimore's that far ahead of the crowd. I mean, I think it's a pretty tight mix. So I get it if you're down on this team and you got some concerns, but I still feel that there's a wide range of outcomes. I mean, last year, at this point, I think you had a pretty good idea that this team was Super Bowl or bust. This year, I mean, if you told me that they were going to end the season winning the Super Bowl, I'd believe you. If you told me that they were going to exit in the first round of the playoffs, I'd believe you. So there's a lot going on, but let's hit the questions. And as always, if you're a member or anything like that, you will move to the front of the line. But looks like Jackson gets in first. Has Tony made any comments about the game? Not that I've seen yet. And, I know that sometimes Kadarius has popped up on social media and made some comments. Did not see him after the game. No big surprise. Kadarius doesn't usually like to talk to the media, so if he doesn't have to, he won't. And it's not anything about dodging the other night. I don't think that was the issue whatsoever. I mean, I think it was just Kadarius being Kadarius. He's not totally comfortable in front of the media, so I think he would prefer not to talk. I think he might feel a little compelled this week. Usually he's in the locker room for a little bit when at least the media is in there. So we may hear from him later in the week about what happened. But like I said, I also know Kadarius. He's a little shy when it comes to the media and everything. So we might not hear from him this week. Who knows? But I haven't seen anything from him. And like I said, if it hadn't been on social media, I wouldn't expect that we would hear from Kadarius. Another Jackson, different spelling, but Jackson. I don't even remember to put the questions up on the screen this time. How about that? Really appreciate Silent Follower. I appreciate that. And Locked On Chiefs, Chris and Ryan are great folks to work with over there. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll try and do more of the locker room interviews. I'm hoping that you do a lot more one-on-ones. A lot of times, you get in these scrums, and those are a little bit easier to shoot. My one-on-one conversations in the locker room usually end up in a lot of my writing pieces because, honestly, you get different answers and better answers and more candid answers when there's not a camera or, a radio microphone there. So it's different reporting. So I try to do different things and, at least be able to tell you guys what I hear in different ways. And like I said, sometimes you get more candid answers when they know that there's not going to be a name attached to them, or at least it's going to be in the written word and not just their face on screen. So I try to get you a little bit of everything, Jackson. I appreciate the comment there. Going on to Deldrick. Where would you put Justin Ross in the rotation, and who would you bench? Right now, for Justin Ross, I wouldn't really put him in the rotation. I wouldn't bench anybody at this point. He hasn't played for 6 weeks, and even then he was a part-time player before that. The Chiefs do have a roster exemption for Justin Ross right now. We don't know if that's a 1 week or a 2 week. Usually they're just 1 week exemptions, so I would expect that he's probably going to be restored to the 53-player roster on Saturday. He can practice with the team, though, so we'll get a little bit of a glimpse, at least in the portion of practice open to the media, about where he is, but we won't get a big picture of just where he is in the rotation yet. So that's just we don't get to see the lines and everything in practice. We don't get to see the stretch really, so we won't see whether he's running with the ones or anything of that nature. But like I said, I think you would just expect a similar role to what he was before he left, which is that if he's active on game day against New England, I would expect it to be a handful of packages that he's a part of, and nothing really big. I think they're going to have to work him back in slowly. Is he going to move ahead of anybody in the rotation? I think you saw signs against Buffalo the other night that the Chiefs are in the process of figuring out what the rotation is. I'd asked Andy Reid very early in the season if this was a year where it was going to be a little bit like Steve Spagnuolo in the past. It takes him a while before he really knows what he has defensively and his rotations, and if that was going to be the case on offense. And he said no. He said he knew what he had. Well, I'm not still sold that he does know what he has. And I think that, you look at the receiver rotations from the other night, and I think you get a sense that it is in flux. Could I be surprised and Justin Ross is up and somebody else is down? Possibly. But I'll be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they just gave him a week or two to settle in. And even then, I think it's going to be a limited package set. I don't think Justin Ross is coming in to play 20 or 30 snaps, anything of that nature. We'll see. I could be surprised, but I think slow and easy is probably going to be the way with Justin Ross. Jack, always appreciate you riding the shipper down. I get you. There's no reason to abandon your team, man. I even say that about my Missouri Tigers. Even when they're down, you gotta stick with the ship. So absolutely, whatever way the Chiefs. And hey, if this is a down year for the Chiefs, once again, count your blessings, because I grew up at a time when a down year for the Chiefs was not this. This would have been the high watermark for my Chiefs growing up. So, there's definitely worse things that could be. How about those Chiefs? Hey, appreciate you, man, stepping in, and appreciate your support as always. The hefty fine for Mahomes. I would guess that there is absolutely going to be a fine for Mahomes. And I should have looked that up already, what the scale is. Because the NFL's got it's detailed in the collective bargaining agreement about what the fine structure is. So I like I said, I should have looked it up earlier, because we'll find out the fines on Friday and Saturday. I'm looking to see real quick here if I can see what the structure is. Let's see. Deontay Johnson a couple of weeks ago got $25,000 fine. I'd expect that. I'd probably expect that for Andy Reid too. Usually there's in the CBA there's sometimes a step up for multiple, infractions or repeated infractions. Neither one of these two have that. So I don't think you're going to see anything massive, but 25,000 looks like the going rate. And after, Isaiah got a pretty light fine. I thought his was going to be a lot more last week for the punch, but it was only around 5,000. So, a little fortunate there. Yeah, I mean, they're going to get fined. There's no doubt about that. There will be a little piece of it, but I don't think it's going to be 50 plus or anything. But 25, that looks like the going rate right now, and I think that'd be about right, unless they decide that there was something excessive about it and they want to make an example of these guys. But that's probably about the ballpark for both of them. James, do you feel the coaches have to try to hog tie Patrick to the point where he can't run the offense like he used to? No, I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, I think that Andy Reid really lets Patrick figure out what he can and can't do. And I think he's gone through this before. And 21 was kind of that adjustment year. And you saw it. I mean, eventually that hurt them. I mean, it hurt them in the AFC Championship game because I still think the Chiefs were trying to do things that maybe they weren't built to do, especially the way that some teams were playing them. And there's a little bit of that this year. I mean, I still think they're probably trying to force it a little bit. I don't think that with Patrick, I really think that Andy lets him learn a lot of it on his own. I mean, there's going to give him feedback. Matt Nagy will give him feedback. David Girardi, the quarterback's coach, will absolutely give him feedback. But Patrick's a learn from experience kind of guy. I mean, I think, and if anything, however this season ends, it's going to be a learning experience for him. And he's going to do, I think you can trust that Patrick will do a great job this offseason going back to see what really didn't work and come back next year with a different game plan. And so, hey, if this season doesn't end with a Super Bowl, I can't. I know I've heard some people say wasted season. My friend Cody Tapp, I heard him talking about that earlier today on the radio about, whether you would call this a wasted season, and he says no, and I say no too, and really because I think that Patrick has shown that he is going to learn things, and he's going to learn things from this season, and a lot of players on this team are going to learn. If that makes them better in 24, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Once again, I mean, if you're going to trade one down season for a couple of up ones, you do that. So, no, I don't think you have to hog tie Patrick or anything. You might have to hog tie him from rushing onto the field with the officials sometimes, but that's just his competitive nature at heart. Joshua, what are your thoughts about signing Snead, tagging CJ, Chris Jones, and trading for Justin Jefferson if he gets tagged by the Vikes? Well, yeah, I love Justin Jefferson. I mean, if you could make that work, I think it'd be hard to hey, maybe Chris Jones could be a piece of that. It would have to be more because you're talking about trading a premium skill position player for a older defensive line piece. So to me, in a trade like that, certainly doable, but I think you'd have to I think the Vikings would be looking for a lot more than just Chris Jones in a trade like that. But the first part about Snead, I think that's a big part of where your offseason decision is going to have to be focused is, do you want L'Jarius Snead next year? What's the calculation about what you could sign him for long term? Is that something that you can afford? Would you rather, potentially let Chris Jones walk, get the compensation back for him, and tag L'Jarius Snead because you want to keep him for at least a year? I could certainly make an argument there. I mean, I could see the Chiefs going a lot of different directions. It's going to be really tough to make a decision here. And I think it's going to be obviously tough to get a long-term deal with either one of them because L'Jarius has made it to the promised land. I mean, he's made the opportunity to test the market in March and see what money is out there. And with the way he's played, I can't imagine that there's not some team out there that's going to fall in love with him and throw a big bag of money at him. He's had just too good of a year. I know there's some concerns around the league because he's got the knee that's been a problem. There's some concerns about that. There's some concerns that he plays too physical, but he has just been too good this year against number one receivers. I got to think somebody's going to, throw a lot of money, and I just don't know if the Chiefs are going to be able to match that. It's going to be tough. And Chris Jones is the same way. Chris wants all the money that he can. So I don't blame him if he wants to, look for more money than the Chiefs are, available for. I mean, what they can't afford. That's a lot of different directions that it could go. And so it's a multiple choice off season, for the Chiefs when it comes to those two guys. And I think it could go a couple of different directions. Jack, member for a few weeks now, which for me is a long time member since we're just brand new doing this. So I appreciate you, Jack. Your opinion on what it cost if we trade Taylor? I remember when in 3 seasons we had 8 wins. Yeah, and that's the thing. And let me pull up Jawan's numbers so I can tell you. I mean, that to me is going to be the tricky part. I don't really see, at least as I can remember off the top of my head, a real good out for this year. Because let's see, he's got for next year, he's got $34 million in dead cap. It would give versus a $24 million cap hit. Yeah, I mean, you could make him a June 1 cut and push some of that, but that would be I think it looks like a $14 million. It looks like 20. It would be $25 million next year, and then 9. The out in his contract was really 25 after year 3, and after 24, year 2, you could get away with 9.4 in dead cap, but 34 in dead cap for a right tackle. I think that my guess is what you're going to see with the Chiefs and Jawan Taylor is one of two strategies. Either they're going to go into the offseason and just, cross their fingers that what happened this year goes away, that the fixation on him, with the way that he plays, because let's face it, I mean, there's a lot of tackles around the league that go on cadence. It's, you've got, I'm inviting a friend in here to join us, so you're going to have somebody else that's going to be able to answer your questions here momentarily, so that's why I'm a little distracted right now. But yeah, I mean, you saw it against Buffalo the other night. Both those tackles go on the cadence. So to me, I don't know that you would really have the same problems next year. I mean, I think that this problem is going to go away to a certain degree. The other solution that you can do is that you can change the way that he plays, which is, tell him he can't go on the cadence anymore. That he's got to watch the ball and be up closer to the line of scrimmage and just change his style. That's not something you can do to a tackle in the middle of the season. That's something that you got to do in the off season. So that I think is just, totally unrealistic about, changing in 23, but, for 24, could you do that? Yeah. I mean, that's got a potential. So maybe that happens. I don't know. We'll see, but yeah, I think Jawan Taylor will be here next year. And let's see, my browser is frozen again, everybody. Sorry about that. Let's get back here. Let's see. I think we already had James's question, and we had Josh's. Aim straight. You are up next. I think what really set Pat off was what it took away from his buddy Trav. Everything else built up like a powder keg. There's no doubt. I mean, the excitement of that play, how big it was. I mean, there was a lot of emotion into that play. I mean, there was a lot of reasons, but at the bottom line, they lost the game. And that Patrick Mahomes, I mean, if you saw the quarterback documentary on Netflix, that is tip of the iceberg for how, intense that guy is and just how, his competitive that he is. So I'm never surprised. And Patrick, he's still for knowing that a camera and microphones are on him all the time. He doesn't like a lot of players. And I expect it on Wednesday. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear the usual Pat line where he kind of blacked out and doesn't really remember what he did and said. He mentioned that in the documentary. I mean, he does. I mean, there's times that talk to him after a game, and and he'll mention something. I think sometimes that's a little bit of maybe a hedge. But because some of the things he says, and maybe just wants to dodge the criticism from them. But I give him the benefit of the doubt. I think there's times that Patrick does just flip that switch, and there's things that happens on the field that he's kind of just not there for. But it was emotional. It was emotional for a lot of people. Clifford, thank you very much for the support. You move up to the top of the line with that one, buddy. I appreciate you. That is very kind. Happy holidays to you as well. Your off-season plan: tag and trade Jones, sign Snead, Creed, and Bolton. I like the elements of that plan so far. Let Trey Smith walk. Okay, we're gonna have a conversation there. Andy can find a serviceable guard anywhere. I'll concede your point. No clue what to do with a wide receiver, though. Well, you could absolutely be on Brett Veach's staff right now, because I'm not sure that they totally know what their plan for a wide receiver is going to be, too. But Trey Jones, tag and trade Jones. Reasonable possibility. I mean, I'm still of the feeling that based on what we saw during the offseason and certainly inferring from what Chris has said during the season and his message on his contract, that, he wants to be paid at a certain level. And I do not get the sense that the Chiefs are still willing to pay him at that level. So they've got the power to control him if they want to with the tag, and then choose his destination. I mean, this would be very similar to the Tyreek situation to a degree. I mean, Tyreek was under contract, but at least be able to control and get more compensation than you would normally. I'm going to bring our friend in here because I think he'll have some thoughts as well, especially when it comes to the offensive line. Let's see. Here we go.
Hi, Matt.
It's my co-host from 41 is the Mic, Nick Jacobs.
Hi, buddy. You said on the podcast I was going to be on here, so we couldn't make you into a liar,
It is my live stream enthusiast, Nick Jacobs.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. So how are you doing? How are things going? I haven't seen you in like a whole day.
I know it has been a little over 24 hours since we last talked. So I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm off today, so I can't complain. It's going to be a big night tonight. I got just like on Jersey Shore, they say GTL. Mine's actually groceries, trash, and laundry tonight. So that's what we're going to do. That's when I know I'm going back to work the next day.
There you go. Yes, I took care of the groceries and was working on making pizza tonight. So after tonight's live stream, I'm going back and finishing up the pizza making. So
outstanding.
We'll have pizza for the rest of the week here at the Chiefs Digest household.
That is just economically efficient, is what that is right there.
Well, it's a perfect time to bring him in because I want to pick your brain on Cliff's question here, which is his offseason plan is tag and trade Chris Jones, sign L'Jarius Sneed, sign Creed and Nick Bolton, let Trey Smith walk after year 4. Andy can find a serviceable guard anywhere, does it often. No clue what to do with wide receiver, though. Now, I think we're probably in the same spot, which is, don't necessarily know what to do at wide receiver, but you're going to put some money into the draft. You're going to kick out and look for some trade possibilities. You're going to look at free agents. I mean, there's no rock that they're not going to overturn for looking for a receiver this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Chris Jones, like you're going to need him to start routinely having a sack every game to close it out here down the road and really kind of turn back into the dominant force that he was last year when he was trying to command, $30 million a year or whatever allegedly was, depending on who you talk to. But yeah, I mean, you're going to need that to happen among anything else if you're going to tag him and have $30 million on your cap that you're not going to be able to use or be flexible in any way, shape, or form. And you're going to obviously have to find a team that's willing to do that. I mean, right now he's not your best capital in terms of making a trade happen because of his age and his price tag. You're just going to have to find out if there is a team interested when the time comes to make a decision on the franchise tag. Because then the other question is, what's the cornerback market going to be like down the road? And we can say that these free agents are available and everything right now, but we don't know who's going to get released for cap casualties and things of that nature. And you probably won't start finding those things out until whenever the combine happens. So, I mean, that's whenever you really kind of start to take shape with what it'll actually be versus what the hypotheticals are and become. Creed and Bolton, those are ones that, you set aside, and those are kind of things, if you're going to do, you do that in June when you know what cap you have available and how you're going to potentially adjust that and do that down the road. Trey Smith, I get people don't want to pay him and think that you're going to have to maybe choose between him and Creed. But I think you just need to see how things shake out for this year and what he's able to do. Because, yes, they may be able to find some guards, but part of it is for Trey Smith is he's a mauling, run-blocking style of guard who doesn't necessarily always get to play that in this Chiefs scheme. Like in a Baltimore Ravens scheme, he'd be a Pro Bowler right now without much of a problem. And that's kind of something him and his agent are going to have to kind of think about down the road if that's what they want to do, or if they want to stay in the Chiefs scheme. So, I mean, look, there's no wrong answer to it, but more than anything else next year, you need the two biggest goals, if I were in the Chiefs' shoes, is what can I do to create more draft capital? And that's either going to be through L'Jarius Sneed or Chris Jones, tagging one of the two of them. But you've also got to be able to have a good feel for what Sneed's market would be out there. And if you're willing to pay if you're willing to tag for, the top 5, top 10 corner money, and are you willing to hold that onto your cap? And with what they need at receiver, what they may need at running back to pair with Pacheco, what they may need at defensive tackle, whether Chris is or isn't here, because they're still going to need defensive tackle help because they're a lot more bare than people realize. So, more than anything else, those are going to be kind of the key positions on that. I don't know what I did time-wise, but that felt like 4 minutes, and I apologize.
But that's what we're here for, Nick. There's no time limit here.
The producer thing in my brain is always, for people that don't know, when you're a producer, like you have a lot of time for every single thing you're talking about. So right there, I would have already told our guest on there, hey, I need you to wrap. And because we got 7 other topics and sound bites we got to get to. So that's where my producer brain goes. I'm
used to having Nick's voice in my ear saying 30 seconds, 10, I don't do that. I don't have to do that to Nick here. So see, we got that going for us, which is nice. Yeah. To me, it's no brainers, signing Creed long term. That's, I think, the anchor that you want to have for your offensive line. I think it's okay to pay one of your guards, and you're going to have to replace Joe Thuney here pretty soon. So to me, if you're talking about paying a guard and you're going to make that Trey Smith instead of Joe Thuney as he starts to get to that age, I'm okay with that because I think that Trey Smith is potential. Once again, you're going to be there another 8-10 years. That's how good he is. And, I don't want to assign motives to anybody, but, it's possible that, after year 3, some guys might look for some security. So there might be, an opportunity to ink these guys if you give them the security now to a long-term deal that might be more affordable than it would be if you wait till after year 4. That's when you want to lock guys up. So, to me, Brett Veach, I know he is going to be looking at those 3 guys, those 3 third-year players that are going to be, you can sign the extension for the first time in January. That's going to be the first 3. And honestly, it might be that, hey, the first 2 that sign get the deal. Maybe the third one doesn't. That's how sometimes the cap works. As far as getting things done. So there's a lot to do there. Hey, Clifford, I think your plan is certainly an option that the Chiefs may do. That's the choices that you have to make because you're not going to be able to keep everything. So
the only thing I'd add on to that, Matt, is that you start the discussion so you at least know the number that they're in or that they're thinking ballpark wise, so you can start budgeting for that.
Yeah. Going over to Kenneth real quick. A couple of little messages here, and then we'll get to the next one. But, a lot of focus on Kadarius Toney being offsides and not on the issue of bad officiating. I think you and I are both of the philosophy that officiating can be a lot better.
Yeah.
Neither one of us are NFL officiating enthusiasts.
No.
I just don't think that the NFL has the willingness to improve it, even though it's ruining their product. But if they're going to fix it, they're going to have to pay their officials a lot more. They need to make them full time. They need to make them younger. They need to have a larger pool, and all that costs money. So if you're going to have more officials and pay them more and train them better, you're going to have to spend a lot more money on officiating, and they have show no willingness to ever want to spend more money on officiating. So I just assume it's never going to happen.
I think where you have the back and forth on this part of it is, if you think about it for us at home on television that watch it or that get to see replays, whether you're a fan and looking at the video board, or you're somebody at home on TV, or, whenever you're up in the press box and you get to look at the replay and everything. I mean, we're seeing the stuff in slow motion at times, and then there's other times where we're getting a different higher angle than what they're having to see, what they're having to focus on the field. So in a lot of ways, how quickly technology has improved in 20 plus years, like that is what is causing us to feel this way about officiating. Because when there's and Monday Night Football has 20 or 30 cameras at a game, and they can catch everything. Well, there's somewhere between 6 to 8 refs, depending on what level of football you're kind of watching, whether it's a high school, college, or whatever. Like, all those things combined, like the only quick solution I think you can have, you talked about the perfect long-term solutions, but I've always wanted a sky judge up there that can help them and be that person that can be the same as what the viewer is in terms of looking at that or seeing at that. And I think that's the easiest way to where they have the feeds. And for people that don't know, the guys that are on the truck that do the replay, I've been in the back of those before and watch the guys work. I mean, there's some guys, they can look at 8 different angles at a time, rewind it, record, and do everything. So you would need somebody like that to be up there with the sky judge. But I mean, like, you could take the broadcast feeds and you could look through them. I feel like that would be, among anything else, that's the cheapest solution, and that's the simplest solution that really helps the game. And maybe that the refs don't have to go do all those reviews and take up that time and walk over, and that doesn't keep the game dragging to a halt, and it allows them to get it boom done and enhance the viewer experience, but also help the referees be able to combat the fact that viewers have technology that are watching it and they don't on the field, although they may sneak a peek up at the board, be like, yeah, no penalty. We talked it through while I kept my eye up there.
I mean, and I would love the sky judge, but then I end up, things like happened the other night in the Bills game happens that makes me even, have less faith in that being a long-term solution or even a short-term fix, because, I did the pool report after the game, speaking with Carl Cheffers and Walt Anderson.
I saw your name everywhere. Good morning, football. Everybody credit you, Matt. It's a banner week.
Sometimes you get pulled into it. But I was a little bit of disbelief when Walt Anderson, because I asked him about the catch with Latavius Murray, and at what point did he have full possession and control of the football, and said that, yes, he had control of the football at the time that his third step hit. And that was the third element of the catch, 2 feet down to the third foot. And that at that point he had control of the football. And I still keep looking at that play. And the only thing I can possibly fathom is that the ruling was that he had control of the football when his third foot hit, because I don't think he had control of the football when his first and second feet hit. I don't think he had control of the football when his fourth foot hit, but I guess at the exact moment of the third. But that's supposed to be what's supposed to fix, plays on the field that get missed and bang bang plays and things that the officials can't fix. And I still don't see how that was a catch by Latavius Murray. But
I think with depending on what officiating crew you have, some of them go by the letter of the law to the T. The rule is exactly this. This is how we're doing this. And then there's some that are looser with it. So, I mean, it just it always depends on what crew you get in terms of if they're willing to go out on that branch and maybe not officiate in that playoff game or that Super Bowl and, want that perfect score because they're following the letter of the law so that they can, get that extra money and get those extra games. So then, you have those situations like you're talking about where it's like, hey, third step, that's what the rule says, ball. And that's what we're going with, while the other officiating crew may be like, yeah, no, that ball's still moving. I might be wrong on this, but we're going with it. Fans may yell at me, but we're going to go with it.
That is true. Let's see. I was going to go to. I'm scrolling here, Nick, and I'm already losing track of things. I was going to go to the second part of Kenneth's question here, and point about the rumor Mahomes is going to be suspended for 3 games. I haven't heard that. I can't imagine for what Patrick said after the game or what he said on the field. I can't imagine that there would be a suspension for that. The most possible would be a fine. A suspension would be uncalled for, at least to me, but I can't imagine. I think that's just, some folks letting the imagination get a little wild. So,
yeah, I would say that you don't take the face of your franchise and do something like that over just a heat of the moment thing in a press conference afterwards. That's not smart for your brand. That's not smart for them, because then that creates a lot more questions about things that I don't think the NFL wants to go down that road, and that gives you negative attention that you don't want to deal with. If you have to do a fine, if they feel like they got to do a fine, I think he's well within his right to say what he did. But I know there's that little unspoken rule that you're not supposed to question the officiating and integrity of the game and all that and everything. But at the end of the day, the fact that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are both willing to say that publicly and knew what the repercussions were, was they were getting a message across that a lot of other players around the league want to say in their games as well. But those guys made sure that got put on the competition committee docket next year, which at the end of the day, I think that's what that was at the end of the day, is that for one part of it, if you look at it from one portion of it, it's that you have the fact that people are so fixated on the Kadarius Toney part and the officiating part that maybe they're not talking about some of the mistakes that happen in the game. And so players kind of get to fix them and don't have to, hear about them on either social media or on the news if they're watching, or if they're driving, listen to a podcast or radio or everything. And so it just kind of creates that distraction for, especially on a national scale. Because national scale, they've already moved on to Tommy DeVito, Tommy Touchdown. So, that Kadarius Toney thing, that was the Monday afternoon. Tommy Touchdowns is the new thing. Like, that's what everybody's going to go on. So there will be some new thing, just like you and I've talked about before. It's like having a laser pointer and, putting it around for a cat, and a cat scrambles around and takes off. And that's what every single NFL story ends up kind of turning into. So, it is what it is on that front. But, with him being the face of your franchise, I just don't think that's a road you want to go down.
Yeah. Hey, I want to give a shout out to a couple of our good friends and fans here. Jack gifted a membership. I think Clifford grabbed that. And then what did Clifford do? Clifford gifted 5 memberships. So there's, I think, at least a couple out there maybe still to grab. I'm not sure. Maybe one. So if you haven't claimed that.
In the holiday season.
Paying it forward during the holidays. I love it. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Clifford. You guys are great. I really appreciate that. And Jack also was throwing in there. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Jack.
There you go. You were worth listening to, and Nick keeps it light. Nick also makes me more fun. So I'm probably more serious when Nick's not around. So Nick loosens me up.
I haven't even had sugar. Well, I had a Mountain Dew earlier today, so I lied. But more than anything, dude, I'm telling you, whenever I have like a candy bar or something, I am amped up. I'm like that Snickers commercial, where like I'm Abe Bagoot or whatever it was, and then see it again, and then that's what that does for me. So that's what that is.
And see, when you support the show like Chief Tico did, you get the shout out. Chef Tico, thank you very much. We appreciate your support. If you got a question, comment, or anything like that, fire away. We'll get you to the top of the line, my friend. And let's go back. Let's see.
So you're treating this like one of those Disney passes? Is that what it is? Where the front of a line? I'll be dang.
Oh. I skipped over this question because I was hoping you were going to pop in because Round Rock.
You gotta tell me about it, man. Like, I'm over here about the coaches film in a dark room, and then I'm like, oh look, I looked at my time and I was like, well, Matt said it on the podcast, so I gotta help my guy out on that one. So that's what I'm here for.
Well, I'm going to let you go soon, and when you need to pop out, just let me know. So
no, I'll hang out for a couple more minutes, but I will not. I would like to be at the grocery store by 8:30. That's for sure.
Oh, we'll get you out then. It's a
bad sign when I go to the grocery store and the stocking people already have all the boxes out. But I also like not being around that many people at a grocery store, and it's actually shockingly pretty well stocked by 8:30 at night, more than you would expect. So
it's nice to get there when the crowd's not there, but you get there after the deli and the meat counter are closed, and you miss out sometimes.
Well, Matt, I've got a certain path that I'm taking in the grocery store. I got a certain game plan of what we're doing.
You got to have your priorities. Round Rock. Hey, Matt, I saw on the 41 The Mic show you two talked about CJ and Coach Cullen going at it on the bench and someone needing to do that with the offense. With EB gone, who would do this? I know I have my answer, Nick, but I'm going to let you go first.
It's a really good question.
Yes, it is.
I'm curious to see who. I'm looking forward to the challenge of who would do that. I mean, you and I don't get to see practices, and by see practices, I mean actual full scale practices. So you could do a training camp and occasionally on OTAs. But I mean, look, Cullen knows what he does. Like Cullen knows how to bring out the best. Merritt knows how to bring out the best. Those guys are great teachers. They're great coaches, and like I have tons of respect for what they do and how they approach everything. So the question becomes, is there some position groups for that? Because, I mean, you were there with me, and so were other guys where we watch Eric Bieniemy when he was coaching running backs, let alone offensive coordinators. Eric Bieniemy coaching running backs, that's an even more intense man than Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator. Like and think about the running back production you used to get from Spencer Ware, Charkandrick West, Jamal Charles, and just the level that Eric put them through. And every single running back he turned out was gold. Just like with Merritt, any secondary guy he turns out, if they happen to hit, the market, there's a team that's going to snatch them up because they know Dave Merritt coached them. So, and I would be that way if I were in the team shoes and needed a cornerback or safety. Did Dave Merritt coach him? He did. Let's sign him. I don't even care. So, yeah, I don't know. Matt.
Well, that's my answer too. I don't know.
Question.
I don't know because, I mean, based on, and when we get to see the full part of practice is really only during OTAs and training camp. Mm-hmm. And, and even at training camp, I think that some coaches are probably a little bit more reserved. I mean, not all. I mean, there's some that are absolutely, Joe Cullen's not going to hold it back.
There are kids out there. So
there are. Yeah.
Todd Haley was not.
I mean, there are coaches that are entertaining to watch if, you're at least maybe 16 or 18 and above. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know because I can't really, and that's the thing is that I get it. Not everybody responds to the same kind of coaching. Some guys need to be loved up. Some guys need to, be beaten within an inch of their lives, metaphorically, not physically, but, not literally, but metaphorically.
They need to be pushed, man.
Some people need to have, there you go, better word choice. They need to have a fire lit under them. They need to, somebody to get in their face. And, is there a coach on this offensive staff who will get in somebody's face? I mean, let's face it. I mean, the biggest enforcer on the offensive coaching staff right now, I think, is Andy Reid. Yeah. But that's the thing is that, Andy and EB kind of had a good cop, bad cop thing.
Yeah.
Because, and that's particularly true if you look at like some of the relationships that EB had with guys when he was offensive coordinator, like LaShawn McCoy, because EB was the enforcer. EB was the guy that gave everybody the bad news. EB was the guy that, now you don't want you be in Andy Reid's doghouse. I mean, you've probably heard the stories. I mean, and he can give you one look that will shrink you down to 3 feet tall. But he can't do that all the time, and he's not the yeller. He's not that guy that's going to, get up in people's face. I mean, that's not his style, and he's the head coach. I mean, sometimes he needs a bad cop. He needs somebody who's going to, light the fire under somebody, and then he can be the one, to come along and give him the positive reinforcement and to soften up. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think everybody on that coaching staff holds their guys accountable. And and Matt Nagy, I know is an intense guy, but is Matt Nagy is he this type that's going to go over to Travis Kelce and rip up a couple of F-bombs in his face and to push his buttons to get him going? I'm not sure about that. I don't know who there is on the staff that would do that. So, that's the one thing I do say that they probably miss with EB, because EB was, for whatever, other positive or negative traits you might assign to him, he was a very good motivator. I mean, there were guys who would run through a wall for EB. So, I think they miss aspects of that for sure.
But here's the thing though that I want to remind people about that though is that's a good thing for Bieniemy. I know it sounds bad to say, but that
Right.
is a good thing for his coaching career long term, is because he's showing in Washington what he can do when it's his offense and what he could do with a quarterback who isn't Patrick Mahomes. And wherever they are in the rankings doesn't really matter. He's showing he's capable of doing that, and he's capable of making them look competent and being a competent offense despite not having a good offensive line there. And that's the problem he has there. He doesn't have one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league, nor an offensive line, but he's holding his own there. And that's what he needed to be able to show, in my opinion, that's what he needed to be able to show people that may be doubting him. And then with what's going on in Kansas City, that leaves people wondering. So those two things combined only help him as a head coaching candidate. So that's why for him as a person, I'm not upset that those things are happening, because that helps him and gives him more leverage to show to owners, well, hey, here's what's going on. You guys need a proof. Here's your proof. So for Eric Bieniemy as a head coach, that, in my opinion, that does nothing but help him.
Yeah, and then but the tough thing for EB is going to be when he becomes a head coach, he's going to need a bad cop.
Yeah,
I don't know who his bad cop will be, but
he'll have to figure out which role he wants to take among the two, and then have somebody else be the other aspect of it on offense and defense.
Yeah, and you see, I mean, honestly, I mean, a great kind of comparison on the offensive side of what we're talking about. You got a couple of coaches in Joe Cullen and Dave Merritt who are absolutely intense, high accountability, fiery, in-your-face guys, and you got Steve Spagnuolo who can be the love him up afterwards. And I think there's a reason why the defensive line and the secondary of this team is so freaking good. I mean, because they got a good dynamic there.
Well, and on top of it, like I've talked about before, if you've ever heard Dave Merritt talk during a press conference, this is kind of off subject, but he always teaches you something. You're always interested in what he has to say. He's never monotone. He's confident. He's cool. He's collective. But among anything else, he just has this voice like James Earl Jones or Morgan Freeman that you're like, I want to hear this guy read a book on tape. That's what I want.
Exactly.
So, and we may have told some people at the Chiefs that they should have him read The Night Before Christmas. So I'm still crossing my fingers that they will have Dave Merritt read The Night Before Christmas and put that up on ChiefsDigest.com.
I would
love to see it.
That would be some fantastic quality content. I've no doubt. Nick, I need to get you out of here because you need to get to the grocery store. But I do want to send you off a couple of compliments here because Jack and Cliff are saying.
One more question if you want it, and then I gotta bolt.
I was just to send you out on a compliment here.
Yeah, one last question, and then I do it.
All right,
what they want, Matt.
Give the people what they want.
What do we want to hear the compliments? They already wrote them, Matt. Okay, and I don't.
I know, but I just wanted to make sure everybody sees that. So, like the YouTube, help me game that algorithm as best as possible, folks. I mean, come on, that's what we need to do. All right, one more question. Let me see if I can't get back here. You know what? I'm gonna bring it up because even though it's still in this ballpark of rumorish, borderline truth nonsense, but we get another report today. Bill Belichick, the era coming to an end. Nick, thoughts?
I mean, he's still chasing.
Just believe it when you see it.
I mean, in New England, I could see it because you get a new head coach and you get a new quarterback that head coach can work with, and then you kind of move forward with that. And if you're wondering like who would be the head coaching candidates, it wouldn't stun me if it's not Jared Mayo or if it would be Josh McDaniels. Those two make the most logical sense because you don't really have to change the infrastructure of the scouting department. Because those guys grew up in it and lived it. You're just potentially needing a newer, fresh voice and a different quarterback to lead the way. So with somebody like Mayo, who it feels like they've been grooming for this opportunity, then you have him as the head coach, maybe Josh McDaniels, the head offensive coordinator. Potentially, who knows? We'll see what ends up happening with all that. But with Belichick, I mean, if you're thinking about teams, I know that he's been already linked through whatever people write or speculate that maybe the Chargers would be interested. You and I both know that the reputation for the Chargers is they're not about spending that level of money, because to get somebody like Bill Belichick's caliber, a team's easily going to have to pay $15-20 million a year at minimum just to try to get him. But there are some, I don't know, there are some teams that I do kind of wonder if they would be willing to let him have control of everything in the front office and also have control of everything on the coaching staff. And if they're okay with the fact he's only going to be there to help build their culture, stabilize their franchise, chase Don Shula in wins, and then once he hits Don Shula in wins, he's out the door. So, I mean, if I was an owner interviewing him, the first thing I would ask is, like, what is your succession plan? Who are you bringing in coaching staff wise? Is there somebody you would be trying to groom for this role? Because I may be in the same position 3 or 4 years down the road here, and this may not be what that owner's looking for. But there are some owners out there that, like, they need a guy who can build a brand new culture and just end that losing. So that's what I don't know. I'm very intrigued to see which way that would end up going. But no, I mean, there's got to be an owner out there that's kind of already starting to think about it, but they can't obviously make a move on something like that, because I'm pulling up the teams right now. He's not going to the Patriots, and there's really, I mean, Titans, no. Jets, who the heck knows what's going to happen there, depending, because I mean, you don't want to.
It's not like we haven't been down that road before.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I mean, if you're going to turn over that apple cart for Rodgers, like, that'd be a bad thing. I don't see the Raiders willing to spend that money. Don't think the Chargers spend that money. The Bills, we'll see how the playoffs shake out here for them, and then everybody else, like on the AFC side, you're not worried about that. On the NFC side, Cardinals probably wouldn't do it. Washington would be, if you're starting anew and you're starting brand new, Washington actually would be a very interesting and intriguing spot. New Orleans would be an intriguing spot as well. But yeah, no, just think, and I don't see Chicago, and I don't think the Giants are going to make a move. I think the Giants are going to see if they can finish strong with Tommy touchdowns and Brian Dable and go from there. But, like, I mean, Washington does make a lot of sense if they were looking to have somebody there, or what potentially would be kind of funny and fitting is if Belichick went to Tampa, just like Tom Brady, and also with the theme of retirement, he's in the state of Florida.
I mean, and that kind of brings. I mean, the Brady example brings me back to the whole, I'm going to believe this when I see it.
Yeah.
Because part of me is absolutely, after everything that Belichick has done in New England, he deserves the opportunity to go out on his own terms. And so if this is Robert Kraft deciding, no, it's time to move on, I mean, if you had told Bill Belichick to do that before the season, or 2 seasons ago, to say, hey, look, here's the standard, and if you don't choose to go before this happens, I'll make the decision for you. But the guy's he's brought more world championships to your franchise than any other coach has ever done. So if anybody gets to deserve to go out on their own terms, to me, it's the hoodie. But it's why I'm not sold it's going to be this way. I'm not sold that he'll be gone. I mean, we've seen this kind of before, and I mean, and honestly, Kraft, if he's the guy that makes the decision, really shouldn't have it both ways. I mean, you can't really decide that you want to get rid of Belichick, and then I'm sure he will say, well, wait a minute, if you want to hire Bill, I need some compensation. I mean, that would be, to me, ultimate Robert Kraft kind of move. But
that's what businessmen do, man. They may not want something, but they're not giving it up for free.
He didn't get where he is by writing a lot of checks, so
or not getting something out of a commodity, which unfortunately that's what you got to consider Bill Belichick in that.
And it makes, the only thing that does in the back of my mind, it makes me think about Andy Reid in Kansas City, because hey, I don't think that Andy's going to coach as long as Belichick did. I mean, we'll see. I could be wrong about that, but there's going to be a succession plan in Kansas City sometime soon, and I just hope it goes a lot better than it has in New England, and I think it will.
Yeah, I don't have I don't have any doubts on that one.
Yeah.
I think whatever ends up happening, they'll get figured out, and they'll have figured out before it gets to that moment.
Well, Nick, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you dropping by, especially because I know you need to get to the grocery store. You are not going to get there by 8:30 now, so I feel very responsible for that.
It's fine. It'll take 15 minutes to get there, and I'm trying to beat that 9 o'clock deadline when they have all the boxes out, that I don't have to treat like a little Mario Kart type thing.
There you go. Well, thank you for stopping by, my friend, and you can catch us back on 41 is the mic Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
So we will have your post game podcast for you after Chiefs and Patriots. Thanks, Nick. I truly appreciate you, man.
All right, until next time, I bid you adieu.
Adieu. And so appreciate Nick stopping by. Hope you all enjoyed that. You get a little bit of a bonus of Nick and I this week. Appreciate him stopping by. I'm going to try and go through the rest of your questions and everything. So fire away. I'll try to answer them maybe as quickly as I can and not pontificate as much as I usually do. But A1 Buds, any updates on Zach Ertz? Nothing I've heard yet. So we will see. I would have thought that he's going to be making a decision what he wants to do here pretty soon. But hey, would like to see him in Kansas City. I mean, I think he can contribute. I mean, would it be an impact difference maker? I don't know if Zach's still at that point in his career and wouldn't have much of a chance, but hey, he's a good pass catcher, does some good things, so I certainly wouldn't hurt. I mean, bring him in and see what he can do. Derelict in a vacuum. What would grade Mahomes' performance for this game and the season so far? Good question, because, I mean, hey, season's still incomplete, so I think there's some work to do here. And that could certainly absolutely change the grade. The other night, I mean, I would probably end up in maybe the C- category. Wasn't all his fault. There were some things that obviously the guys around him offensively could have helped him out with. They've got some obviously holes that are not his fault. But Mahomes hasn't had a clean game for a little while too. So, that's part of it. And I'm grading this on a curve too. Because hey, Patrick Mahomes' C- game is an A+ for some quarterbacks around the league. So I'm going to grade it on a little bit of a curve, but I think he'd tell you it's below his own expectations and below his average. And honestly, for the season, I'd probably, and once again, grading on a curve. I mean, I don't think it's been a failure. I don't think it has been dismal. So I'm not down in that part of the grade card. I'd probably be in the B-, C+ kind of category. Once again, I mean, I think you have to acknowledge that there's been a lot of things that he has not gotten help for. I mean, if you take a look at some of his numbers, I mean, obviously he's got, his completion percentage is fine, especially with the drops that he's had, but his numbers as far as balls being on catchable and on target are fine. The drops are, hey, those are huge. And I mean, they have cost him touchdowns. They have cost him yards. They have cost him stats. So I'm not going to ignore that. And, the only really, to me, serious blemish on Mahomes' grade card this year is just on his performance on the deep ball. And I definitely think that a lot of that I do put on the receivers. But here's the other part of it is that I put the part on Mahomes of kind of continuing to push it, which, I mean, it goes back to the definition of insanity is, doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It's been pretty clear from early on in the season that this was going to be a team that was going to struggle to throw in the deep ball and especially with the coverages that the Chiefs have seen. I mean, to a degree with this receiver group, I think Mahomes needed to be a bit more of a game manager this year. And I don't think he's always done that. So, that's why I say I'm not going to be too hard on Mahomes because I think he's been dealt a really tough hand. Things did not work out the way that the Chiefs hoped in that receiver room this year. They've had some growing pains on the offensive line and on the outside. So it's not all on him, but I think that there's probably been some times that he's been stubborn. And I think that, I don't know if he would admit that now. I think he might admit it in the offseason when he looks back at some of the film that there's some plays that he's left on the field. And I do know he would tell you that right now, that there's some plays that he's missed out on. So I mean, like I said, I'm not going to give Patrick too much of a hard grade because I think that this has been a situation not entirely of his own making. And I think he's been trying to make chicken salad at times. So give him some credit for that. Deldrick, Trey Smith, the general of the offensive line. I tell you what, he is an assertive beast. And I tell you what, I think you do want, a veteran guy when Joe Tooney moves on. And to me, Trey's that guy. So I would look at trying to lock him up, but you never know. You never know. And you mentioned Willie Gay, leader of the linebackers. He's definitely the emotional leader. I mean, he is probably the biggest energy giver on that defense. And that's an important piece to have. And we haven't really talked a lot about, Willie as a free agent and whether he will be or should be back next year. I think that the Chiefs would like to bring him back, but I think that, there's some economic realities of it too. So we will see. But I think that's going to be an interesting conversation in the offseason. Siam, what is the real chance of T. Higgins and Michael Pittman Jr. hitting free agency without a franchise tag on them? Probably pretty slim. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, I would guess that it would probably have to be a tag and trade. And that's the thing. I mean, you look at the receiver class and free agents for next year, and it's not going to be a very good class. I mean, if you're going to look for a veteran, you're probably going to have to look at the trade possibilities, because I do think that there's a few of the potential free agent receivers who are going to get tagged. Some of them might even get signed. But it's going to be a tough class. So, if you're the Chiefs and you want a veteran receiver, there might be one in free agency that slips through. But by and large, it's one of those positions that teams just don't let good receivers hit the market. I mean, they try and keep them, and if they can't, they make sure they've got the tag for them. So it's going to be tough because I think there's a real good chance that both those guys get tagged. Jackson, and this is the really $1 million question. Why was there such a drop-off in the receiver room this year? None of them were lighting it up by any stretch of the imagination, but they were serviceable receivers. And that's one of the perplexing things to me, Jackson, because, you look back at it and you look at the numbers. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has never had a problem elevating receivers and getting them good numbers. I mean, Demarcus Robinson put up good numbers in this offense. Byron Pringle, another great example of a guy coming in and putting up good numbers, undrafted receiver, putting up good numbers in this system. Mahomes has got a good history of helping elevate guys and getting guys good numbers. This year, I mean, maybe it's just a confluence of events. Maybe it's certainly injuries are a part of it. I think that's absolutely chalk it up to the case of Kadarius Toney. Is it age? I mean, the only one that's really, you would say the veteran category is that, hey, did Marquez Valdez-Scantling hit his peak, and this was just the inevitable, downside starting? Possibly. Everybody had sky high expectations for, but was that just fool's gold? Was it? Are there other reasons why he just didn't have the breakthrough season this year? It's perplexing. I mean, it really is. And certainly the drops are part of it, and maybe that's just a psychological thing. Granted, there's a new wide receivers coach this year. And the Chiefs have had turnover at that position since Greg Lewis left 2 years ago. They've had different wide receiver coach each and every year. I think that can be an issue. I mean, their consistency as far as the coaching that you're getting and the message and the approach, and the Chiefs have a pretty young coaching staff right now at a lot of positions. I mean, even though they got guys like Matt Nagy, who's been around for a while, Tom Elvin, tight ends coach, has been around for a while. But you got also, and Andy Heck's been a while, but you've got young guys at the receivers coach. You got young, Todd Pinkston, still relatively young and inexperienced at running backs. Some of the guys that you have behind the scene are your senior assistants, like Joe Blameyer. I mean, are still young guys and not a lot of experience. So maybe that played a part into it too. I think it's bizarre, because I think that everybody, including the Chiefs, expected a lot more production from that room. And I'm not sure there's even one explanation to explain just why, nothing really clicked this year, because it certainly seemed like that it's a better group than they right now are with the sum of their parts. Let's see. I appreciate you, Jack. Talking mentioning Nick there. Yeah, Nick knows his stuff. So, and I appreciate. I learned a lot about football from Nick. Nick knows his stuff. Deldry coming back. Jack Cocker, Willie Gay, Drew Tranquil are gone next year. What will the Chiefs keep or do with only 5 draft picks? And I would expect that some of those guys will be back. I mean, I didn't look at Cocker. I was thinking that he still had some team control, maybe a tender, maybe if that's his 4th year, they can control him with the tender offer. Drew Tranquil was interesting because, I mean, he was a very affordable free agent signing this year, and I can't see why he would not get, some good money to be a middle linebacker somewhere next year because he's just looked too good this season. So, and Willie Gay is another one. I mean, I can see that. I mean, I can see going a couple of different directions there. I mean, I think Willie's going to get the opportunity to test the free agent market. Chiefs have a lot of needs in a lot of different places. I just don't know if they're going to be able to afford everything they want. And Willie might be one of those guys. It's going to be a tough one, though. But at the same time, I mean, they've got some young guys that have been developing, and they've done a good job at developing some young players. I mean, they've got Cam Jones that they really like. So I don't think that the coverage is going to be bare there, even if they do lose some of those linebackers. I think they like what they've got, and certainly they'll have Nick Bolton and Leo Chenal. Those are 2 guys to be building around. Mahomes is getting beat all up on the national sports, and even the non-sports will have an effect on his Walter Payton Man of the Year pick. Good question, because I actually thought that there had been a lot of momentum around him. The Chiefs are pushing him pretty hard. There's been a pretty good PR campaign behind him, and I think there was a reasonable chance that he could be his time. There's a couple of other veterans out there that I think will also get strong candidacy, and that is also absolutely an award sometimes that, it's whose turn is it to get it? I mean, you're only going to be Walter Payton Man of the Year once. So is it time for Mahomes, or is it somebody else's turn to get that and Mahomes will get it down the road? That's what I think would be the bigger factor. But, Dennis, it's a good point. I mean, there might be some people in the selection process that are like, hey, after Mahomes got all this heat for maybe the world's not best sportsmanship, that maybe now is not the time, but they'll give out the award till February. So by then, probably this will be much ado about nothing and water under the bridge. So maybe it won't affect it at all. But that's really the biggest factor for me with Walter Payton award for Mahomes is just whether enough of the selection group really feels like he's ready and has earned it. I mean, I think that obviously his body of work on and off the field is worthy of it. But hey, you want to wait until he's down the road in his career? Maybe there's some guys closer to retirement that you feel are more deserving of it at this point. That's probably the bigger thing against him. Hey, Marcus, little Marcus checking in. Thank you. Happy you can check out the show. I've been a Twitter for 5 years. I appreciate you, man. Thank you. I really appreciate you following over here to YouTube and checking everything out. I appreciate all the support from all you folks. Yeah, the Mahomes suspension would. I don't think that's going to happen. So we can move on from that one. Yeah. I don't think there's any concerns right there. Let's see, going on down. Yeah. Cliff, yeah, I think Ryan and I are on, and Ryan Tracy and RGR are in lockstep on this one. I'm probably going to put this down on a column at some point about just what I would do if I could wave a magic wand to fix officiating in the NFL. I'm not saying it would work, but it's a systemic thing. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed with officiating. I just don't think that the NFL has the stomach to do it, because I think it means that they would have to pay these officials more money. I think they would have to hire more of them. I think they need to make them full time to make it worth their while to be in the physical and mental condition that they need to. That I get it that these guys usually get the rules right, but they don't always implement it correctly. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done, and a lot of learning and a lot of training, and, that you can do year round. And, and right now, all these guys have other jobs that they do during the year. I'd make it a full-time job, pay them accordingly, hire more of them so you can give them a little bit more rest, so that if a crew is having a bad time of it, like there's a crew out there right now that's been having some rough calls every single week, maybe they need a week off and you bring in another crew. You need to rotate pieces in. I mean, and hold them accountable. I mean, sometimes, you need to get demoted or you need to, move on. I mean, in the NFL with officiating, by and large, it's not far off from Major League Baseball umpires in that you can pretty much referee until you decide not to anymore. I mean, the NFL doesn't actually ask you very often to stop refereeing. So, I mean, I think that's really, by and large, the only accountability that we know of is that your punishment is that you don't get to do playoff games and postseason games if you're not, don't have a good year as an official. That doesn't seem like a real serious punishment to me. Let's go. Let's see. I love the discussion, by the way. I'm really enjoying this. I love going through and checking out the chat and everything because you guys have a great conversation in there, answering Jones questions and asking each other the stuff that doesn't even involve me. I like that. Was it Matt? The weird thing that the Buffalo game, the Bills stick his right arm right before the snap. I'm assuming I didn't notice that. I'm assuming that is probably pointing out the Mike linebacker. He's pointing out something that or something that he's pointing out to one of the guards about where the protection needs to be or who to watch for. Those things are fairly normal. And yeah, I mean, centers will do a lot of movement. That's why I was still a little confused by the play against the Eagles a few weeks ago when Creed got the call for the abrupt movement, because some centers move a lot and move very abruptly. And Jason Kelsey's one of those guys. Jason, is pointing out, hey, you got it. This is the guy. Hey, here's the mic. Here's where the protection needs to go. Watch for the blitzer here. I mean, he's pointing out everything on that offensive line, and a lot of centers do. I mean, a lot of centers do a lot of movement, and so they said it was an abrupt going into a squatting position. I don't know about that, but it is what it is. Round Rock. Michael Jordan was famous for ripping into his own teammates to get him up to his intensity level about, I mean, and there's no doubt. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is one of those guys. I mean, if you're talking about, we're talking about coaches holding people accountable and getting the guys' faces. Patrick will be one of those guys. He does it probably a little bit quieter, and I would imagine that he gets a little bit more vocal maybe when the media is not around and when the people aren't around at training camp. But I mean, I can tell you, Patrick is constantly talking to guys on the field. Whether it's, going up to a receiver after a play and saying, hey, I need you to do this on your route instead. I need you to go out instead of in. I mean, if the safety's, doing this to you, I need you to go the other direction. I mean, he will absolutely tell these guys, after a rep on the practice field, his feedback. How much of it does he get into them and say, hey, so and so, pull your head out? I don't know about that. Travis Kelce probably does that. There's a few players, and this is absolutely a team that's not only coaches but players hold each other accountable too. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why this team has had a lot of success, because they do have some guys like that. Brent, think the wide receiver room will be different next year. So do you think KT should still be here? No, he's still on his rookie contract, but the good doesn't outweigh the bad. I mean, he's still on his rookie contract, so you've got control over him. He is affordable. I don't really see any problem with them trying, because remember, again, I mean, with the injury this year, from a development standpoint, this was kind of a lost year for Kadarius, and as far as fitting in. So I wouldn't have any problem keeping him around, seeing if if a full healthy offseason makes things different for him. The Chiefs certainly felt that way going into training camp, that this was not going to be his role and be his contribution. So he is not a negative presence. He's not somebody who's a drain on the team in that standpoint, from an attitude standpoint or a personality. They enjoy having Kadarius around. I mean, everybody thinks he's a good teammate. So from that standpoint, I don't think there's any additions through subtraction. If you think that Kadarius is still a talent that you can get something out of, keep him. I mean, it's too low cost not to. I mean, made the investment already. I say stick with it. I mean, unless somebody comes calling and thinks that they can turn Kadarius into something and is willing to give you a good price. But I would expect Kadarius to get another chance next year. Let's see. Do coaches really taking 15, 20 million a year? So, I mean, the coaches' salaries in the NFL are usually a pretty well guarded secret. I mean, I think it's generally known that, the 10 to 15 range is kind of the high end. We don't really know where a lot of these guys at. I mean, there's not really a good number out there that'll tell you what Andy Reid makes. It's not like the players where there's a database that's got all these numbers. I mean, the numbers are usually between the owner and the coach, and not many other people know. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a coach or two out there in that 15 to 20 million category. Maybe Belichick was. Andy could be. I don't think so, but I think he's probably a little under that. I think we knew that John Gruden was in the 10 million a year category. There's some sure several in that group, but that's. I mean, there's still plenty of players in the league who make more money than their coaches, though, especially the head coach, and then it gets even worse on down the road. I'll stop by. Will Ross take more snaps? I mean, nothing to lose. I don't think so yet. I mean, like I said earlier, I think he'll get worked in slowly, but I'd be surprised if he takes on a big role. I think they're going to work him back into the rotation slowly. Marcus, knock knock. Who's there? Broncos 1 game back. Yeah, I'm going to be a little worried about that. And like Jack said, that's what happens when you have a real coach. They're turning things around. That win, I think, over the Chiefs gave them a lot of confidence. I think that they are still doing it a little bit smoke and mirrors because their ratios as far as just point differential and turnover ratio is still not good. I mean, they're kind of getting away with some things. I don't know how sustainable it is. I don't think that they're going to overcome the Chiefs. I think you'd feel a lot better if you had some air between you and the Broncos. You don't play them again. But Chiefs control things too. I mean, obviously they went out. They've got 4 winnable games. They should be able to take control of this. But I mean, right now the Broncos are better than the Chargers, and especially with Justin Herbert being hurt now, they're better than the Raiders, who really struggle. I mean, they kind of found things with Antonio Pierce for a couple of weeks, but I think that's kind of wearing off now. That interim head coach thing usually wears off for a while. So I would worry about the Broncos. I don't think that they're going to win the West. I mean, I think the Chiefs got that, but possibility you could see the Broncos in the playoffs. I'd be a little worried because with that win, they believe in themselves. They think that they can beat the Chiefs. And that's sometimes half the battle is believing you can do it. What if they made those refs wear the clipped cameras so we could see their point of view? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, any more cameras on the field, the better. I mean, we've seen that the pylon cams are great. I absolutely do it. Marcus, reporter Sam's article about Mahomes high school football, 6 interceptions. That was a great story. He did that at the Super Bowl. I think, was it last year's Super Bowl? If you haven't read it, that's a great story. Sam McDowell tracked down all the players in high school who I think his last year that intercepted Mahomes. That was a really good piece. Sam thinks in creative ways, and that was a good one. So if you haven't read it, hunt it down and check it out. That's a good story. Sam does good work. Let's see. I think we're getting to the end here. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to fire away. But Brandon had the last comment in there. I would trade Jones. I mean, it's distinctly possible. I mean, and like Nick said earlier, it's going to come down, I think, to, what is your most tradable commodity? I think there's actually reason to believe that if the Chiefs, feel like that they're going to make a trade for one of their free agent pieces that they want to control, I think they might get more for L'Jarius Sneed. I really do. I mean, because of Chris with the age factor and teams, reluctance to pay a lot of money to a player entering their 30s. I mean, I think that would hurt the value. I mean, I don't think that there might be a team that would absolutely say, hey, if Chris Jones is the piece that they're missing from being a Super Bowl team, they should be willing to pay through the nose for it. So maybe that is the better way to go. But usually it's the younger player, and especially right now, L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, name me a corner who's playing better than L'Jarius Sneed right now. I have a hard time making a case for any of those. So yeah, I think it's going to be a tough decision, but and with Chris, I mean, I think it's more than likely he's not going to be back next year. I think it's just going to be too tough. We saw last year in the offseason with that negotiation, and I haven't necessarily seen things change. With where Chris is at, where the Chiefs are at, I think they're still where they were when they left things off, as far as just getting a deal done for 23. So. Problem is that I think the Chiefs have two tradable commodities that are not under contract for 2024. And you're going to have to figure out, which one you think you can sign. If you can't sign either one of them, I think you're going to have to decide which one is that you either want to keep or you want to trade. It's not a great situation for the Chiefs. I mean, they're going to have to make a tough decision, but if they can't get something done with L'Jarius, then they're going to have to make a tough choice about, whether it's L'Jarius or Chris that you tag and then what you do with them afterwards. And then what question do you want an honest read from Andy Reid based on this season's performance? Good question. I mean, I think I would go back to what I mentioned earlier with a question that I asked him earlier this season, which was, does it take you a while to sometimes figure out what you have offensively? And, at what point did he realize or kind of get that maybe this receiver room wasn't going to be what he thought it was going to be? I mean, maybe that was a realization during the season. I mean, and maybe, hey, I think he'd still tell you he's optimistic that these guys are going to figure things out and get things together before the end of the year. But I'm not that optimistic. I think he's optimistic about it, or at least will express that optimism. But yeah, I think that's one thing I'd like to just know is just when did he get the feeling? Was it in training camp before the rest of us? Was it during the preseason, week one? I mean, when did he kind of get, the feeling, or at least realize and understand that, this receiver group wasn't kind of coming together the way that they hoped? I'd like an honest answer on that one. So, hey, Jack gifted another membership. I think we'll probably wrap things up here in 5 minutes at 9 o'clock to kind of make reason even almost hour and a half after my little bit of a late start. So claim that membership that Jack gifted out there. Very generous of him once again. So yeah, if you got any more questions, we'll try and get them in here at the very, very end. Snake VP, can Patrick restructure his contract again to open up wide receiver option? Yeah, Patrick can restructure his contract every year, and essentially it's actually in the Chiefs' hands about doing that. And the numbers changed a little bit with the extension and the restructure that he did this year. Let me pull it up and I can kind of tell you how it works a little bit. At least give you the Cliff Notes version about how they could free up some money. Because next year, he's got an $8.6 million base. He's got $12.8 million that's going to hit against his contract, against his salary cap that's based on prorated bonuses that have already been paid out. He's got a roster bonus of $34.9 million, and that's the bulk of his money for next year. So he's got a salary cap hit of $57.3. And like I said, $34 million of that is bonus, and roughly $21 million or almost is salary and built-in, can't move prorated bonus that's just stuck there. So, I mean, you can move the base salary around, you can reduce that and free up some space. You can convert that roster bonus into a signing bonus, and which is what they have typically done in the past, and change that. I mean, you can use any or all of that. And that's what the Chiefs have typically done, has been to just adjust that roster bonus, convert it to a signing bonus so they could spread it out over the next 5 years. They can do any amount of that. I mean, they could do the whole $34 million, which in that case just rounded to 35, and think about it that way. It would basically mean that he would count $5 million as a cap space for each of the next 5 seasons. It would reduce his cap number next year by almost $30 million. And then it would just be spread out over the next few years. But yeah, I mean, you could conceivably free up, you include his base salary in there, you could free up as much as about $36 million in cap space by restructuring Mahomes. And with that roster bonus, the Chiefs have the option of converting that at any time next year. So That's their luxury. All they have to do is just cut Patrick a check and say, hey, signing bonus. Here you go. They don't even have to get a signature on it or rework anything. It's just part of the contract that they can do that. So I would expect them. They will do that to free up some space. So no doubt about that. Marcus, rookie left tackle Wanya Morris filling in for Donovan Smith. Did he have a good game against the Bills? Did you hear his name? Because I didn't have anybody mention or ask me about Wanya until after the game, and that right there, always a good indication that an offensive lineman had a good game. Was it perfect? No. I mean, I think probably the biggest complaint, I mean, there was maybe one pass rush that I think was a little rough for him. There was a little bit of criticism that maybe he didn't do enough with AJ Epinesa to get his hands down on the tipped pass that turns into the interception. But that's an experience thing that'll come. I'll put a little bit on Mahomes too for just not getting enough air under that ball to Clyde. He puts a little bit more air under it. It's completion, and Clyde gets a pretty good gain. But no, I mean, the fact that you did not hear Wanya's name during the game, pretty good indication. I mean, I thought it was a fine effort, and a good indication for the future, because I think there's a reasonable chance that Wanya Morris is your starting left tackle in 2024. And just getting some experience right now, I think you're seeing enough that can show you that he can do it next year. If you were Andy, what would you do to try and right the team? Man, I don't know. Andy Reid's forgotten more about football than I'll ever know, so I have to put it down with him that he would know the right button to push if there was one to push right now, and that's the thing. I just don't know if there is. The one thing, I mean, I think you could possibly do is just give Patrick a game plan that the talent on the team can execute right now. I think it would be a very boring game plan for Patrick Mahomes. It wouldn't be a lot of fun because Patrick wants to move the ball. He wants to push it. He wants to chunk plays. But I mean, I think right now, I mean, you really need a confidence booster more than anything. I mean, I just would like to see a game plan that was built on ball control, the objective to have Mahomes with a 75%, 80% completion percentage, just absolutely paper cut the defense apart, with just in the zone. Don't look anything deep. Just throw everything short. Run the football. Use your running backs out of the backfield. Get your defensive backs and linebackers to bite down on that, and then you can open up things downfield a little bit. I think they just almost need a vanilla game plan at this point to break things out. That's what I would do. But like I said, Andy Reid and Matt Nagy are 20 times smarter than I ever am. So if there's a button to push, I got to think that they're going to find it at some point. James, probably wrap up here with the last question if there's nobody else pops in, but can you get a new receivers coach? I think you will. I mean, Joe Blameyer was the receivers coach last year, and that was a new job for him. They moved him into a kind of an analyst, kind of a senior assistant kind of role on the offense this year. Made a spot for Connor Embry, who was another up and coming guy. I think they might do the same next year. Honestly, the next wide receivers coach might be on this team. I mean, I think Todd Pinkston is an up and coming young coach. He obviously has a lot of experience with Andy Reid, played the game. I mean, I think that's important for a receivers coach. So, we'll see. I mean, I think there's a possibility there, but I don't disagree. I mean, there's a lot of rumblings and a lot of conjecture that maybe the Chiefs need some fresh blood on the offensive side and maybe some new voices. So I think you'll get that. Hey, Marcus, yeah, same show next Tuesday. Probably. I'm kind of tweaking around with time slots about kind of what's worked best for everybody and what's the most viewable, because I know there's a lot of different shows out there. Next week, I may even try doing a second night just to see if there's another night works better. But for those of you who have been joining me on Tuesdays, I do not want to abandon you. So my plan is for the rest of the season to do the Tuesday night show. And if I can squeeze in the time and do a another one during the week. See if we can get some new folks involved. I'd love to do that. But I will not abandon my Tuesday night crew because you guys have just been too good and too supportive of me. I really appreciate everything. And with that, I think we've wrapped up everything. So appreciate everybody joining us tonight. Bring it back. Like I said, we'll be back next Tuesday. You can also hear me and Nick. We'll be back on 41 is the mic on our podcast after the game on Sunday. That will probably be out Sunday night. So you can look forward in your streams Sunday night, Monday morning. We'll have our breakdown of Chiefs and Patriots. I'll be back here on next Tuesday. And like I said, it might pop up another night. Maybe we can squeeze in an extra one this week if I can. And keep trying to get it out there. So yeah, I've enjoyed doing these Q&As. You guys have all been great and make me feel really comfortable doing this. Pretty scared and a little self-conscious at first, but you guys are all helping me fit in a little bit, and I truly appreciate it. Have a great night, and we will talk to you all again soon. Thanks a lot. Take care, and we'll talk.